Hi, I'm Andy Schmuckler. I'm trying to present here in a series of videos a presentation of what I call a better human story. Um, the heart of it was about the inevitable consequences of a creature starting to invent its own way of life, embarking on the path of civilization. That's really been sort of key to my thinking. Um, but there's another manifestation of the same problem, a problem of systemic dynamics is what we're talking about. Civilization emerges into an anarchic situation, and that anarchy generates a dynamic on its own. The way our systems work does a lot to shape our world. And I'm particularly concerned about the war of all against all, that dynamic, the competition for power that has generated a selective process that drove civilization in certain directions. But there's another system in our world which is considerably more benign than the war of all against all. But it also has the property that the system has its own dynamics. And those dynamics can be a mixed bag. And that's the market system, which I think is a marvelous tool. And as I alluded to before, my dad was an economist, so I kind of grew up on the marvels of how the market solves a lot of problems and creates efficient, optimizing kinds of outcomes. It's really quite beautiful, that model. And there's a lot of validity to it. I mean, when I wrote the book that's back there about the market economy, I praised the market economy for its efficiency, that I could have a bowl of oatmeal for, I forget how many cents, but not much. All about the efficiencies of the way things get done. But like the intersocietal anarchic system, the competitive system of the market has its own dynamic. And one of the ways of looking at the suboptimal, I mean, there's a lot of ways of looking at how the market needs to be combined with other kinds of controls. And every advanced capitalist society came to the conclusion that a mixed economy was required, that you would be stupid and reckless to leave the whole thing to the market. And then the trick is how to combine collective decision-making through the political system with the atomistic processes of the market. We live in a country here in the United States in which the balance of power between the economic system and the political system is far from ideal. We have a mixed economy, but the part of economy that is said by its advocates to run on greed is too powerful in relation to the government. Yeah, Adam Smith said, we don't ask the baker or the butcher to fulfill our needs out of their generosity and charitability, or whatever the words he chose, but out of their self-interest. So the market allows people to act on the basis of their self-interest. And Adam Smith said, as if by an invisible hand, it's led to create a kind of an optimal outcome, which is true in some but not all dimensions. So this is relevant. I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at this, environmental, but we've got a case of historic magnitude to look at, which I've been looking at a lot. My wife her main issue is the climate change in the environment. Every January, she plunges with a group of people into the Potomac River as part of her fundraising effort for Chesapeake Climate Action Network or something like that, which is a great organization. And anyway, I'm very aware of the brokenness in our systems that have contributed to the fact that we have, as a society, have known about the problem of climate change, with all the names it's gone through. But since the mid 70s, and in some ways even before that, I wrote about it in my Parable of Tribes dissertation. I had a paragraph that we have done so little to be able to behave responsibly and morally in relation to this challenge. We've accomplished so little of what ideally a society would do. And the reason, well, there are a variety of things that one could talk about. But apropos of the dynamics of our systems, the one I want to talk about is that the market economy, over time at least, I don't know how different it would be at the very early stages when you've got individuals, not a random set of individuals. I mean, Andrew Carnegie and Vanderbilt and Rockefeller and Ford and all those titans of big wealth growing out of the corporate world. Eventually that becomes institutionalized, and I don't know how much difference there is. But I suspect that the dynamics within the corporate system help to generate the problem that I referred to before and I'm going to talk about now, and was the topic of a op-ed piece I wrote called "Who Kills for Money?" And what we've got is pretty clear evidence that every industry that gets put into the position of confronting the fact that actually what's making them rich is killing a lot of people, every time some industry has discovered that and faced with the choice of doing what the world needs done or getting in the way of the world doing what it needs to be done in order to enrich itself further, which is killing for money. Every time the industry has chosen the path of greed and selfishness and indifference to the common good. The whole issue of climate change exists. Well, I mean, it was a challenge that awaited us. When people first started burning fossil fuels, it's understandable that they didn't think of it in terms of what are we doing to the atmosphere and what's that going to do with the climate. People do stuff, and this isn't, I don't know how a really healthy civilization would have dealt with that issue for the first, I don't know, well over a century. I don't know, when would people start thinking about things like that? Not at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. In the age of the railroads? I don't know. I think that science advanced during the 20th century to the point where it became possible for people to know stuff that they wouldn't have known, I don't think, even in the first half of the 20th century. Some people might have had ideas. I think there is evidence that there were isolated thinkers that basically saw that there could be a problem here, like 1912 or something like that. But the whole idea of climate change, I think it becomes sort of part of the available understanding in some non-trivial way by the mid-70s. If a guy like me, I mean, I'm not a climate scientist, but I wrote about it in 76, I think, when I was. We've got several industries, actually, that have been put into that position and have all made the same choice as the fossil fuel industry. Now, the fossil fuel industry is a huge catastrophe, but these others were not all that trivial. I mean, there's the tobacco industry. There's a billboard near where I lived in Albuquerque for some years. Basically had a running total of how many deaths so far this year that are tobacco related. And basically, you could say tobacco was killing or helping to kill 500,000 people a year back then. This is more than 20 years ago. So that's not nothing. And the other industry, there are only three industries I'm aware of that have really been put in this position. The fossil fuel industry now, and then the tobacco industry, and even before that, the asbestos industry. And I know about this stuff because a long-standing friend of mine has made a great living for the last, 40-some years, as an expert witness, basically nailing the asbestos industry to the wall because they knew full well that they were killing people, but they did it for money. And the numbers involved there, I don't know what my friend would say. I don't think they measure up to all the people addicted to nicotine that were dying off, but still quite considerable. So anyway, that industry has been destroyed by its inability to pay off to all the individuals they killed who were in the process of dying, and the families. My friend has been involved with a trial in Italy, a Swiss billionaire who's got that kind of blood on his hands. Less than 300 charges of manslaughter of some kind, of which he's now been convicted, but it's on appeal. And I'm told that the system will ultimately protect the billionaire who killed the people. I don't know enough about Italian justice and politics to know if that's as corrupt as what's happened in this country, which is that the fossil fuel industry was able to buy a political party. So anyway, we've got, in addition to the intersocietal system, we've got an economic system that creates industries. And every occasion that an industry has been put in that position, they've shown that they don't hesitate but to kill for money, which I think is a reflection not of human nature, but of what kinds of spirit animates the corporation. First of all, there's a selective process for who gets to be in the position to make those decisions. They got to be people who are willing to go along with the way the system has gotten shaped by the process by which it is decided who's going to get how much money in the world of market transactions. Now, this is a much more benign system than the one that selects for what wins in a war of all against all. I mean, after all, among the things that you need to do to get rich, like Henry Ford, first of all, you got to be good at accomplishing something like an efficient production of the Model T. And second, you've got to be able to provide something for your customers, the people who are impacted by your offering of products on the market, something that they will value. We get a lot of good stuff out of the fact that in a market economy, we get people motivated to give us something of value that we value highly enough to pay a price for it. That's the good side of the market. And I don't want to be an ungrateful fellow. I look back at my younger self, the social critic that took all kinds of things about the America I grew up in for granted. I take a lot less for granted now, not just our democracy, but that I can walk into a room and turn on a light, that I got a DVR that I can store a little library of movies that I can take my breaks with and let my mind wander into a different world. I love that. A lot of that is because we've had a market economy which motivates people to do things in their own self-interest, like Adam Smith's baker and butcher, that give us something we want. But we've got problems too. And climate change points at how serious those problems are. It would have been good. Our children and grandchildren would have lived in a whole lot better world, I fear, if the fossil fuel industry had behaved responsibly when it found out what it was up to, what the consequences were. And if our political system was such that there was no way for big money to buy a political party to cripple our ability to do what was urgently necessary to meet the challenge that some people who are worthy of respect say is the greatest challenge humankind has ever faced. So the market system has its own dynamic. I'm not going to go further into that right now. But it's suboptimal. It needs to have its faults corrected by other forces, like the action on climate change. People may at the pump are not giving any weight. The sellers aren't, and the buyers aren't. The system doesn't call upon us to give any weight to. We might be causing a planetary catastrophe by doing what we're doing. The system doesn't give the signals. It's very good at getting the signals about what we, as individuals, as social atoms, the seller and its profit maximization, and the buyer in the maximization of what the economists call utility. It works really well for dealing with us as social atoms. But when it comes to the whole, that's not what the market's about. And so the whole has got to put the issues of wholeness into the system. And the problems that we have with our failures on market change for such a long period of time point to the need for some major changes in how the system works. What would it take to have an economic system that's still good at meeting the needs of people who go to the market willing to pay money for the things that can be bought and sold? Good thing to do. What can be done to continue to enjoy the benefits of that while protecting us from anything so catastrophic potentially as what the dynamics of the market seem to have made possible in terms of crippling us in dealing with a major challenge that we face as a species? I don't claim to know that answer, but I do claim to know that the evidence points to that being a question we need to address. Who kills for money? We cannot have huge, powerful entities running around in our world that are happy to kill for money. Do we? Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.